Okay, what's up, y'all? Will with Schedulefly, and we just finished the interview with the three folks at Chai Pani that spent 12 days over in India, and now I'm sitting here with Meherwan Irani, who is founder, executive chef, CEO of Chai Pani Restaurant Group. A good friend, and he's been doing this with us for a while. He's done the podcast. He was in the book, and I just have a ton of respect for this gentleman and the way he has built his business, the way he operates his business, the passion and love he pours into his business, he and his team. So, Meherwan, thank you for taking some time today. I know you're a very busy guy.
Not at all. Thanks, Will. A hell of an introduction.
You are the man, for sure. So, okay. First of all, we just talked to your team, or three of your team of the five that went to India, got their take on all that. Why was that important to you to have that trip together? I know that was sort of Isaac's dream for a long time. Why was it important for you to have that fulfilled?
It's part of what we do with Chai Pani in particular, and both of my Indian concepts, is we're telling a story. Not just through the food, but the visual story, the story of India, the story of street food of India. And I've got these guys, our staff, front of the house, back of the house, that are all such a big part of telling the story. In fact, they are the ones telling the story. I mean, I'm barely in the restaurants anymore since I'm running around trying to grow the empire, so to speak. So it was really important from day one for us, for these guys to really feel like they owned that story, that they understood, that they had, what I call cultural competence. And they did a great job, all things considered, that many of them have never been to India or even traveled outside the country. But I always knew that at some point, in order for these guys that, and we keep our staff for a long time, we have just really high retention rates. So I knew at some point it was important that in order for them to truly believe and own and understand the story of India that we're telling through our food, that they had to go there. I mean, there's no substitute. You can watch movies, you can read about it, you can have me talk ad nauseum about it, but going there changes everything. And so this was the first year we were able to actually afford to do that. And we made a commitment that every year we're going to send 4 staff, hourly staff a year, and at least 4 managers a year to India.
Wow, it's amazing. That's amazing. And what have you gotten from them since they've gotten back? What have you...
Well, everything I hoped for. I mean, their minds were blown. The kitchen guys came back with a completely whole new appreciation for what we do. What was really remarkable was many of them said, it was amazing to eat in India, but now that I've eaten there and eaten all over the country, at least all over the parts that they visited and came back here, like, Chai Pani food is legit.
Yeah.
In many ways, they came back recognizing that we've sort of evolved and pushed it forward from what it can be in India. So that was really sort of, I know that, and for my chefs to have to take my word for that, as versus going to India, seeing it for themselves, coming back, and then tasting the difference in how we do things and how things are done there. And secondly, they get it. That's the biggest thing you want is, what's that old thing? Do they want it? Can they do it? Do they get it? So that getting it part, going to India, it's one of the oldest civilizations in the world. It's one of the few places on the planet where you can have a 6,000-year-old religion coexisting next to modern India with traditions that go back thousands of years, all completely jumbled in on top of each other with, modern civilization as we know it. And very few places left where we can still experience both worlds. So for them to go back and see that, and it's palpable. Yeah. The stories they've been telling our guests, the stories they've been telling us, it's huge. And it spreads. So everybody in the restaurant now is excited to hear the stories. They're picking up on that energy, and they're amped up to go to India. There's some benefit in it for me, that these guys come back from India with so much energy and excitement about our food and truly understanding what it is that Meherwan set out to do 9 years ago. But more importantly, it's a staff benefit. It's giving back to people that have given so much to us.
You're going to have a lot of people wanting to go on those trips every year.
Well, the first round of applications, I think people were a little had some trepidation about like leaving the country and going to India and just going out there completely by themselves. Some of these guys had never even had a passport before. After they came back, we're expecting next year's application.
It's going to be tough.
Tough. So, but my commitment to everybody was like, if you stay with us, you hang with us, everybody's going to go to India. That was a commitment I made at the staff meeting, because I knew that when we only picked the first 4 guys, that everybody else would be feeling a bit left out and worrying if they'd ever get a chance. And I made a commitment: everybody will go to India. If you work with us for a year, you care about this place, and you care about what you're doing, we'll send you to India.
Gotcha. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're changing gears a little bit. So, you started Chai Pani 9 years ago, and now you have how many? I can't even keep up. How many concepts, how many locations total?
Yeah, so we've got sort of 4 concepts. There's Chai Pani, which is Indian street food, but it's more the daytime street hawker food. Mm-hmm. So really crispy, crunchy, mostly vegetarian-based, lots of bright flavors, tamarind and cilantro and mint and chilies and sort of... That's sort of the flavor profile of street food. It's literally called chaat, which means to lick your fingers. And that's the name of the food, because you're eating up in the street and you're eating with your hands. Then we have a concept called botiwala, which is also another aspect of street food of India, but it's more the nighttime grill street food of India. So kebabs, naan, flatbread, sizzling meats over fire. Buxton Hall barbecue, is another concept for us that we're looking to grow that one too. And that is straight up traditional Eastern North Carolina whole hog vinegar mop barbecue. And then we've got MG Road, which is our Indian-inspired sort of cocktail, craft cocktail bar and lounge. India Bollywood inspired. So a lot of funs with bringing in sort of a lot of the Indian flavors and spices into cocktails. That's it for now.
That's it for now.
So those are our concepts, and we're growing each one differently. Botiwala, we've got 1, and we're getting ready to open number 2 and number 3 this year and grow that. Chai Pani, we've got 2, 1 here and 1 in Atlanta, and I think we'll stick with the 2 for a while because they're beasts to maintain. Buxton Hall, we're going to do a spin-off of that, possibly something to do with fried chicken. The Buxton Hall fried chicken sandwich was touted as one of the best in America by Bon Appetit.
Oh,
and
really?
Yeah, and then MG Road, anywhere there's a place that could use a great, neighborhood, fun cocktail bar, we'll pop them here and there as sort of anchor bars. So,
what do you mean Chai? You've got the 2 Chai Panis, and you say it's a beast to run. What do you mean?
Well, Chai Pani is really my story, and it's very chef-driven, it's very ingredient-driven, it's very community-driven. It's very hard to replicate. Indian food's one of the most labor-intensive foods on the planet. I mean, everything has to be done from scratch. Even if I wanted to, I just can't buy anything off the truck. I can't buy a condiment. I can't buy a sauce. There's nothing. You got to do it from scratch. And managing it well and telling the story and getting the investment of the team in it, it's hard to replicate that over and over again.
Okay.
So whereas Botiwala was designed to be much more approachable, streamlined, counter service, much more simple menu. I mean, there's like 6 items on the Botiwala menu. Chai Pani probably has 30. And because it's meat-centric, it's more about marinades, meats, fresh herbs, and flatbread. So much more easy to replicate.
Okay.
And a more approachable cuisine.
Yeah.
Chai Pani is a very specific cuisine. I mean, people are excited about it, but it's very experiential. I watch people walk up to Botiwala and order as casually as if they were ordering pizza or burgers. I mean, it's so approachable.
Gotcha. So that's one you're looking to expand.
Exactly.
And you just said you just got back in town. How do you find where you're going to go next?
Good question. I mean, right now we're let me back up. We developed a location strategy. We wanted to have a framework for if we're going to expand, what's it going to look like? And it's really important to write these things down, because if you don't, all of a sudden you find yourself without a strategy and sort of ad hoc restaurants all over the place, and it's a beast to manage. So our first strategy was driving time. We wanted everything to be within a 2 to 4 hour driving distance of Asheville initially. Why? Well, it's easy to deploy resources. If I have to send somebody from one restaurant to another, they can get there in half a day. We can handle emergencies. I can get to any of those places quickly. Second was reputation. So if you work with cities that are close to each other, eventually people hear about you and they're excited about you coming. And the third for me was sort of energy. So does the city have the demographic mix and the kind of people there that be excited about a new concept like Chai Pani coming? Because it's a very specific cuisine. I'm not opening another better burger joint. So those 3 are sort of the primary driving sort of framework for a strategy initially.
How do you get to know the city, though? I mean, you're here. How do you go somewhere new, Raleigh or Charlotte or wherever you're going? And
yeah, I just have I mean, I know this sounds weird to say this, but I have an intuitive sense for cities and neighborhoods. I mean, I've lived all over the world. I mean, grew up in India, lived on the East Coast, lived on the West Coast. I've probably moved 20 times in my life.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, just developed a retail sensibility. And it's a sense of not just looking at the vibe of a city, but somehow noticing the kinds of places that are opening, the kinds of neighborhoods they're opening in. And that gives me a pretty good sense of how we'll fit in or not. So it's not just about picking a city, it's about which side of the city you want to be. Is it the east side, the west side, there's neighborhoods. And it's a gut thing. Hopefully it won't let me down. At some point somebody's going to say you got to get more structure than that, but it seems to be working for now.
Okay.
I think cities have, like people, have vibes. You can tell a person's personality after you hang out with them for a little bit.
Yeah.
I really feel cities feel the same way and neighborhoods feel the same way. And having done what we've done for long enough, we know the kind of neighborhood and the kind of environment and the kind of building and location that a Chai Pani would work in. I look for energy.
Look for energy. What? Speaking of energy, you probably have to expend a lot of energy these days. You wear a lot of hats. Are you still cooking much?
Yeah, but it's mostly what do I call it? Cooking for show cooking.
Yeah.
So it's at events, it's at seminars, it's at charities and foundations. So in 10 days, I'm heading off to New York to cook for the James Beard Foundation for their Sunday supper fundraiser at Chelsea Market. 350 people. I'm sure it's New York's finest, and it's fun because there's an opportunity for me to really sort of cook for people that normally may not have walked into my restaurant. So I really enjoy that, and I'm doing a lot of it. And it's pushing me as a cook because in the kitchen, we're just repeating the same thing over and over again. You're a victim of your own success. God forbid I change something in the menu. People will be out there with pitchforks and torches. But when I get invited to cook somewhere else, it's a chance for me to really stretch and try something new and get creative and innovative with what we're doing.
So you try a lot of new things when you
absolutely.
go?
Absolutely. I mean, the foundation is always Indian flavors, Indian street food. But I really try to get a sense of the occasion, where I'm at. I really believe that restaurants have to be extremely aware of where they are. I mean, we're an Indian restaurant, but we're in the South.
Yeah.
So if I'm not using sweet potatoes and collards and and thinking of how can I make an Indian hush puppy or an Indian meat and three, not just because I'm trying to do, the F word fusion, but because I'm trying to do the most honest thing that I could do, no different than if I'd picked an Indian street hawker off the streets of India, dumped him in the middle of North Carolina with access to nothing but local ingredients. He'd make do. It would still be Indian, but it would be using what's at hand, and that's what they're doing in India anyways. So whether I'm in New York, whether I'm at a sustainability foundation, whether it's about seafood, it's about making sure that that whatever I'm cooking is relevant to the occasion, and that's what pushes me then. It forces me to think outside the box and not just stick to the classics, if you will.
Yeah, sure. You've come a long way in 9 years. You've had to, you started with this place. You started on your first day. You ran out of food. I remember that story.
Yeah.
And here we are. What do you enjoy most about what you're doing now?
Meaningful growth. About maybe 2 years ago, somebody asked me randomly, so what's your goal? And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, what's your goal? And I started talking about my sort of vision. And the person interrupted me and said, well, that sounds like a vision, but there's got to be a goal. How do you explain to your people and your staff what it is that you're doing every time you open a new restaurant? Like, what's the point? And it was the first time I really stopped and said, it's organizations have vision, but at some point you also have to set a goal out there that's meaningful to everybody involved. That's the reason you show up for work. It's not just to do the same thing over and over and over again. So I sat down and started thinking through, well, what is it that we're working towards? And I said, well, we're growing. Well, why are we growing? Well, because it means so much in terms of what we can do, what we can give back, how we can take care of our people, how we can grow our staff that's been with us for a long time, help them, take care of their communities and their families. So the word meaningful then came into the picture. It wasn't just growth, it was meaningful growth. And then the last thing that popped in my head was like, yeah, but not growth at any cost. We have this inherent value system that's built into the founding people of the business, and we always have to stay aligned to that. If you're growing and lose sight of what it is that we set out to do and the things we care about, then it does become meaningless. So meaningful growth that's aligned with what we value is our company goal. And you ask me, what's exciting? It's that. It's making the growth happen, making sure it's always meaningful, that there's a reason that somebody can look at the new restaurant we're opening and say, I understand why they're doing it, I understand who they are, I understand who the people are, and understand what they're giving back to the community. I mean, that's huge. And if you can't tell that story well, then we're failing. And constantly aligning with the thing that woke me up 9 years ago in the middle of the night and looked at my wife and said, I want to do this.
Yeah.
So that enough of itself, that's a full-time job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what drives me. It's what gets me jumping out of bed in the morning, and keeps me focused every day.
You're still jumping out of bed every morning?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Because, how could it not be exciting to grow and have so much meaning built into it? And I'm using the word meaning as a placeholder for a whole bunch of things we care about. We care about the community and giving back and our staff and growing them and sending them to India and having a town, once we open, feel better off because we're there than not. So it's a bucket for a whole bunch of feelings, but it's a useful word, meaningful, because it implies that there's always intention behind what you do. How could you not get excited jumping out of bed, having intention, being inspired, and then being fulfilled when you do what you set out to do?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Tell me about the team that you have here, because as you grow and to fulfill all that you just talked about, you've got to have the right people in place. You're going into new towns. New places. So tell me, you still have the core foundational team that you built this with for many years?
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
So we've got, we all moved out of day-to-day restaurant operations. I mean, working the floor and running food and cooking behind the line. And, that was the original team, the original 10, 12 people that helped start this place. I mean, even before we opened the doors, it was the same people, fixing the benches and revarnishing the tables and scrubbing the floors. And now they're all in, well, for lack of a better word, executive positions, giving their expertise and their experience back to new team members, like the guys you just interviewed that went to India, Andy and Gavin. So, they're all with me, and every day I wake up thinking about how do I help these guys grow, get better at what they do. We started this initiative called Chai Pani University, and it's a combination of executive leadership skills, because these guys, they didn't have careers in leadership and management. I mean, They grew into those roles. And it's easy to assume that, you'll figure out everything you need to know on the job. If you're running food or waiting tables or even cooking in the kitchen, that's true. But once you're managing people and having difficult conversations and managing conflict and thinking strategically, these don't come naturally on the job. You have to invest in teaching those skills. And I think that's what helps our team stay. Is all the fulfillment that they want from their jobs, we're thinking of ways to provide it. So they never feel like, I've maxed out. This is the most I'll ever grow as a person. Yep. Let me go find that somewhere else. So I wake up thinking about that all the time. Like, what do I need to do? Leadership development, seminars. This year, as part of everybody's comp package, we announced a stipend for self-development. So in addition to all the coursework that we pay for all year long and the people we invite to talk about leadership and management, on top of that, I said, anything you want to do on your own, here's a stipend to do that, and I want you to use it. I mean, and go out there, because I can't think of everything that you may want to do for yourself. So, somebody else may look at this and say, you're trying to put together, a company package of benefits. I'm like, no, these are not benefits. This is investment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is. What else is on your mind these days?
Well, giving back is really on my mind a lot. Maybe it's a function of getting older, Will. But, next year I'll be 50. And I do look back, and in moments like this, when someone's talking to me and asking me to recap how far we've come, I recognize that you have to credit so much more than yourself and the people around you. I mean, the people that come and eat at your restaurant, the town, the vendors, the support system for a restaurant to do what it do, and this is massive. And we take that support system for granted because we feel like it's transactional. Well, we're paying them to deliver stuff. We're paying them. But if you move it past transactional to relationship-based, it changes how much and how far people are willing to go for you. And over the years, people have gone so far for us, our community or their customers or city, that I wake up every day thinking, how do I give back more? And it's a virtuous cycle. The more you sit there thinking about how you can give back, the more people then want to continue and maintain that relationship with you. So, we, and not just in our communities. I mean, we're thinking like, how do we expand that outside of our communities? So we launched an initiative where we're supporting this community center in one of the largest slums in Mumbai, the Dharavi Community Center, where we are supplying books and educational tools for them, and two of the girls that are about to get ready to go to college, we're sponsoring them for college. So it's locally and globally, wherever we can, in a way that actually makes sense. I mean, it makes sense for me to do in India because that's where I come from. So that's big in my mind, because I feel I don't want to just write a check.
Right.
How do we do it where it's work, where everybody's involved? It's not just waking up and stroking a check and feeling like you've done something to help the world.
Much more meaningful.
Much more meaningful. So there's that. And then sort of legacy that I'd love for 20 years from now, 30 years from now, Indian food in America to be completely different from what I grew up eating, and people's perception of it to be completely differently, and somebody hopefully looking back and saying, hey, along with all these people that pushed it forward and made it what it is today, hey, that company and that guy played a big part back in the early days of doing that. And then the last thing I'm working on is this initiative called Brown in the South, where myself and 3 or 4 other pretty renowned Indian chefs that all happen to live and operate the restaurants in the South, we recognize that at some point we have to, as immigrants that now live here, at some point, the question is, at what point do I stop saying, hey, I'm from India and I happen to live in the South, and start saying, hey, I'm a Southerner and I happen to come from India.
Right.
And the reason the distinction is important is because when you don't do that, then you never truly claim where you live, and never truly become woven into the fabric of that. The South is changing so rapidly.
Sure. It's
so diverse. And it drives me crazy when people tell me, oh, you live in the South, as there's some stigma around it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I love living here. I mean, it's, of course, we have a history that goes back a long way, but what part of the world doesn't? And I feel like I need to play an active role in helping sort of tell the story of the South differently, where 20 years from now, people will look at the South of the United States of America and say it's one of the most diverse, culturally forward, progressive, cool parts of the country. And it'll only happen when people like me stop saying, I'm from India, but I just happen to live here for now.
Yeah.
And start saying, I too am a Southerner, stand up, be counted.
Yeah.
But I bring my history, my background to this part of the country, just like every immigrant from all around the world has always done so. So the initiative is to encourage, people that have immigrated here and are calling this their home to start thinking of themselves as Southerners, and maybe write a new chapter in what it means to be a Southerner.
What specifically are you all doing around that?
So, we're chefs. Yeah. So we essentially started a dinner conversation where we imagined, like, okay, if we truly owned living here, would we cook differently? Would we present ourselves differently? Would we act differently? And we found that we were more engaged, more looking into the history and the tradition, and I'm speaking purely culinarily, into the culinary traditions of the South and Appalachia, and how much of that can we incorporate into what we do into our restaurants. So we started a series of dinners showcasing that. And this is the only way we know how to have community, is to get everybody around the table to eat and talk. And the people that gathered around the table were, journalists and culinary sort of, deep thinkers and enthusiasts and progressives and people that were very much invested in, the South becoming more progressive. And so it started with a dinner, but then a conversation evolved around that. And what led out of that, in no big part because of the series we did, was me and my 4 other brown chefs, Maneet, Asha, Vish, and Chidi, were named Southerners of the Year by Southern Living magazine.
Yeah, that's amazing.
For Indians, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what I mean. It's like everybody can be a Southerner.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
You don't have to drive a pickup truck to be a Southerner or wear a trucker hat. Everybody can be a Southerner. Just stand up and be counted and participate and engage and reach out. And we, people do that, but I wanted to make it overt. I felt like my daughter, who looks like me, when people ask her where you're from and she says from the South, I don't want them to say, well, no, but really where are you from?
Right.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, because it's, of course, everybody has a history. But for when somebody says, where are you from? And she's from the South, say, oh, of course that makes sense. Tell me a little bit more about your heritage.
Yeah.
As versus, wait, how can you be from the South? You look brown.
Right.
So I thought Southerners look this way. So that's what it's about. And then Time Magazine, in their issue, I think it was the October issue, their entire magazine was about the South. It was a Southern issue, and Stacey Abrams, who was running for governor, was on the cover of it. But there was an article in it about 31 people that are changing the South, and I made that list.
That's awesome.
So that's what I'm working on. Is
fantastic.
Is putting the energy and the time into changing the South. Not because I'm saying there's something to be ashamed of, but every place that has people coming from all over the world to live there need to give as much as they're taking.
Yeah.
And it's easy to take from where you live. You have to be much more intentional to give to where you live, and that's what I'm trying to do.
And you are doing a wonderful job of it, and it's amazing what you've accomplished in that area. And the South is changing in so many good ways because of that type of mentality, and that's exciting to see.
Thanks.
What you're doing with food and marrying together, traditional Southern cooking and bringing in what you bring from India is. It's amazing, and I love the way you're looking at it. I love the philosophy you have on this, your approach to it. It's authentic, it's genuine, it's thinking about so much more than just your restaurant and your group of restaurants, and your legacy that you're building is amazing. So all the things you just talked about that you set out to do, Meherwan, you're clearly doing it with a lot of intention, a lot of purpose, a lot of thought, a lot of care, a lot of love, a lot of passion, a lot of energy. And it's paying off, and I'm.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, I am privileged to be able to do that. It's not. It's, and I recognize that. I have a platform. I have a restaurant. It worked.
Yeah.
So it's not that everybody can just pull themselves up by the bootstraps and say, "Well, go out there and change the world."
Sure.
So I recognize how lucky I am.
Yeah.
To have that chance.
Yeah. Well, you're capitalizing on that, and that's
Thanks.
great. Yeah.
Thanks.
You're taking advantage of it. So. And doing a wonderful job with that. Well, listen, I'll let you roll. I know you're a busy guy. I appreciate catching up with you as always. Thank you.
Same here.
Thank you for
always
the
a pleasure.
opportunity.
Thanks for listening to me talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Take care.
All right, man.
All right, bye.
See you.